So Candice, when you're choosing your oracle deck, how do you pick one? Do you kind of let it pick you? Do you do what you just sort of mentioned there, where you maybe gravitate to someone doing a reading and go, oh, I really need that deck?
It's funny. I used to buy every deck I possibly could. That's how I used to pick my decks. I was like, but now I don't feel like I don't use oracle decks like I used to. I used to use oracle decks a lot when I really didn't trust my own intuition and I really wasn't connecting into my guides. And I didn't have, like, I felt like I almost like I needed confirmation when I was, so now I will only buy a deck when it really resonates. Like, I'll either go in somewhere and I'll be like, ooh, and I'll pick it up and it'll just call me. Or the artwork. So now when I buy a deck, it needs to be kind of special and unique. And there's one coming up, which just is the epiphany of all of that. And it's not even necessarily, because oracle decks are all different themes and stuff, which is why I love oracle. And I think I really sit with where I'm at the time. And if the I guess the theme of the deck, if it's, animal or animal spirit or whatever the underlying tone of the deck, if that resonates and the artistry is really, really pretty. It also helps if it's got a nice guidebook though. I do love a good guidebook when I'm first connecting, because just did set the tone.
Yeah, it's always nice to see what the author originally intended the card to be about, and then over time you make it your own.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I've worked with an oracle deck before and done it all completely intuitively. And I was like, oh, I love this deck. And then when I opened up, like a few months later, I'm like, I'm just going to see. I was like, I did not resonate at all with anything the author is saying. And I was like, oh, maybe I think I got what I needed from the deck, and I don't use that deck anymore, funnily enough. But I like to know what the intention of the author was when it goes in, because their energy does sit in that deck. And if the intention's not there, then you're not going to get the same results or the same flow as you would if you really resonate with actually the intentions of the author as well.
That being said, I don't read a lot of the guidebooks of the decks. I
know you don't. I love that though.
So I like go with, because I believe that the decks are Spirit's way of communicating with us, which they are. And so when we're reading, sometimes I can get caught up in the author's interpretation, whereas I got my message as soon as I saw it. I got that number, or I got that color validation, or I got that gold abundance, tick, So sometimes that also is truthful. The cool thing, though, is that when you have two different perspectives, like you and I, we still have common grounds in a lot of ways. And at the same time, you have to find your own journey within that. There will be some cards and some decks, like one later I'm going to share, where I would not interpret this at all intuitively. I go to the book right away. I have no qualms about that. And it's a personal deck that I use, because I'm not going to sit and do a reading for someone and read from the book, although today I will. So it's kind of like it's not always that easy, is it? Or it's not always that black and white, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think it's important to mention that if you go in with a deck with the intention of reading it intuitively, then you're going to get what you need from it. If you go into the deck intending to read from the book, then you were going to pull the correct card to get the right answer. So if I was going in and I was doing a reading for someone and I'm like, oh, I'm going to check on the book, then then the cards that I pull will match with what I need from the guidebook. If I'm going in like just intuitively and going, then the right cards are going to come out, because the cards are going to come out that sit with my imagery, that makes sense to me, so that I can deliver the message that you need. Does that make sense? Have I explained that right?
Yeah.
And so that's how you would work. Whereas either your guides are working through the divination cards or the oracle cards to give you the messages that you need. And that's how That's how all oracle cards work. And that's why you need to make sure that a deck makes you want to grab it. Resonates, exactly. Makes you feel good, makes you, talks to you in a way that goes, yes, this is a pretty deck, or this is a deck that makes me feel good. So
when I choose my deck, that's what I do as well. I look at the art, I see whether or not it gravitates to me through the art, basically. And then when you're lucky enough to connect with the author as well, like Colette Byrne-Reed or Denise Lynn, you know, these beautiful writers, and it's a bonus. But because I read intuitively, the guidebook isn't always my, like, although you never know until you're opening the deck anyway, what the guidebook's going to say. They don't give you previews of that usually. So,
and there are a lot of decks, some of the really pretty decks. So if you are going to be reading intuitively, then definitely, you know, have a look. Usually on the back, sometimes there's pictures of the pictures. So please have a look and see whether it's a deck that has enough imagery in it to read intuitively. Because I've grabbed decks before and gone, like you said, it's like, they're all one color. They all have a very similar imagery going on, or unless you know exactly specifically what that goddess has going on, then you might struggle a little bit, especially if you're starting out. So